Warning sirens howled as the sky turned brown and the air began to scream. Sand hit metal like gunfire. Someone was shouting over the radio. Then the signal died mid-word. The ground shook hard enough to throw bodies against the walls. Something massive was already outside, moving fast. The outpost lights flickered, then went dark. Emergency red filled the halls. Doors slammed shut on their own. A pressure alarm spiked into the danger zone. No one had time to ask why. People ran because standing still felt like dying. Outside, the storm rose like a living wall. Not wind, not weather. It twisted and folded, full of stone and static. Sensors showed numbers that made no sense, then burned out. The sandstorm was growing, not passing. It was aiming. An alien security unit tried to reach their armored bunkers. The first bunker cracked. The second vanished under the sand as if swallowed. Heavy steel meant nothing. The storm peeled it open layer by layer. Across the yard sat the human shelter. Small, plain, half-buried, thin walls. A joke, they had said. Now it was the only thing not breaking. A human engineer slammed her hand on a manual switch. The shelter door slid open with a low hiss. Inside, the lights stayed calm. No shaking. No alarms. Just a deep hum, steady and alive. "Get inside now," someone yelled. Aliens hesitated. This shelter was not rated for storms like this. Not even close. But the ground behind them collapsed into spinning sand. One by one they ran for the human structure. The storm screamed louder. Something moved inside it. Not debris. Not machines. A shape passed through the wall of sand, tall and wrong, leaving silence behind it. Every motion made the ground vibrate. The vibration matched a warning tone that no system recognized. The shelter door began to close. A commander shouted for it to stop. His voice cut out as sand filled his mask. Hands reached the door. One slipped. Another vanished. The door sealed. Inside, pressure dropped to safe levels. The hum grew deeper. Lines of blue light spread across the walls, forming symbols no one had seen before. Panels slid open without commands. Systems powered up that were not on any map. An alien officer stared at the human engineer. "This shelter is military," he said. She did not answer. A calm, cold voice spoke from the ceiling. Not loud. Not rushed. "External event confirmed," it said. "Containment protocol active." The floor began to descend. Outside, the storm stopped moving outward. It began to circle the shelter instead. The floor dropped faster, and several people fell hard against the walls. Gravity twisted sideways for one breath, then snapped back. A deep echoed from above, like something hitting the shelter on purpose. Dust poured from the ceiling seams, yet nothing cracked. The blue symbols burned brighter. The alien officer reached for his weapon. The human engineer grabbed his wrist and shook her head once. "Do not," she said. Her voice was tight, not calm. Fear hid under control. The calm ceiling voice spoke again. "Descent locked. Manual override denied." Another struck the surface. Not random. Measured. Testing. A new figure pushed through the crowd. An older human man in a sealed coat, his face scarred and pale. He looked at the glowing walls like he was meeting an old enemy. "It's early," he muttered. "It's too early." The shelter dropped past rock layers at impossible speed. Temperature stayed steady. Air stayed clean. No one could feel the motion, but the depth counter spun faster and faster. Numbers not meant for this planet. Outside sensors flashed on for half a second. The storm was no longer spinning. It was kneeling. A low vibration rolled through the floor. Not shaking. A pulse. It matched the rhythm of the blue lights. The shelter answered something outside. An alien technician screamed and pointed at a newly opened panel. Inside was not machinery. It looked grown. Smooth, dark, veined like muscle. It pulsed when the storm pulsed. "This is not a building," the technician whispered. The older human stepped closer. "It is both," he said. That was the mistake. The commander demanded answers. The human engineer turned away, jaw locked. The older man did not. "This shelter is not for storms," he said. "It is for what storms wake." Another slammed the top, stronger than before. The shelter did not move. The screamed instead, like metal tearing under pressure. A new alert appeared. Not red. Black. "External breach attempt detected," the voice said. "Threat classification revised." Something sharp scraped along the outer shell. Not digging. Listening. Each scrape sent a response through the walls, like sonar. One alien collapsed, clutching his head. Blood leaked from his ears. "It's calling me," he gasped. "It knows I'm here." The blue lights dimmed, then shifted color. The older human closed his eyes. It learned faster than we predicted. The floor stopped. Total silence. Then the shelter unlocked one internal door, deep below, marked with a single human word burned into the metal. "Core." The voice spoke one final line, softer than before. "Containment failure probability. Rising." The core door opened by itself, slow and loud. Cold air rushed out, sharp and heavy. The older human stepped forward without waiting. The human engineer reached for him, then stopped. She knew he would not turn back. Inside the core was a wide chamber with no floor, only a dark surface that moved like deep water. Light did not reflect right. The blue glow bent and twisted, as if afraid to touch it. A narrow bridge formed from the wall, growing piece by piece. The calm voice changed tone. "Authorized presence detected," it said. "Caretaker status confirmed." Every alien turned toward the older human. He did not deny it. "You built this?" the commander demanded. The man shook his head. "No. We found it." He stepped onto the bridge. It did not shake. And we learned what not to touch. The dark surface below shifted. Shapes moved under it, slow and massive. Each movement sent pain through the skull, a pressure behind the eyes. Several aliens fell to their knees. The human engineer swallowed hard. "You said it was asleep." "It was," the man replied. "It is not anymore." A new sound filled the chamber. A low signal, repeating, layered under the shelter's hum. Not coming from inside. Coming from far away. The storm was no longer alone. On a hidden display, star maps flashed to life. Dots appeared around the planet. Then more. Not ships. Beacons. Ancient. Answering a call. The commander backed away. "You lured it here." The older human finally looked back. His eyes were full of regret. "No," he said. "It was already here. We only built the cage." The dark surface rose, forming a shape like a spine pushing upward. Symbols flared across the walls, matching patterns older than any known language. The shelter shook for the first time. The calm voice spoke faster now. "External awareness expanding. Memory bleed detected." The human engineer cried out as images slammed into her mind. Cities buried under sand. Skies burning. Shelters like this one, broken open from below. Always too late. She saw humans running. She saw aliens running. None of them escaped. She staggered and grabbed the rail. "This has happened before," she whispered. "On other worlds." The older man nodded. "Every time it wakes fully." The commander raised his weapon again. "Then we kill it." The man turned, sharp and angry. "You cannot kill a continent that thinks." The signal outside grew stronger. The beacons answered in harmony now. The storm peeled away from the shelter, revealing the sky. It was full of light. Not stars. Eyes. The calm voice paused, then said something it had never said before. Containment no longer primary objective. The core surface split open. Something inside reached upward, and spoke in a human voice. People screamed as the voice echoed through the core. Weapons came up, shaking hands everywhere. The commander shouted orders that no one followed. The shelter lights pulsed like a dying heart. The thing below spoke again, slow and clear. "Do not fear," it said, using perfect human words. "You built well." The human engineer collapsed to her knees. Tears ran down her face without sound. The older man stared at the rising shape, lips moving in silent denial. He had known it could think. He had never heard it speak. The dark surface pulled back, revealing part of the body beneath. It was not flesh. Not metal. Layers folded into each other like thoughts made solid. The sight hurt to look at. "You said it was asleep," the commander shouted. "You lied. I told you the truth that kept you alive," the older man snapped back. "This is what happens when truth comes too fast." The calm voice tried to interrupt. Failed. Static burst through the speakers as the entity's presence crushed the system. "Your machine is loud," the entity said. "It hurts." A new panel burst open on the wall. A hidden control space. Old. Human. The human engineer saw it and froze. She knew that panel. She had sealed it herself. Inside were 3 switches, all marked in red. The older man followed her gaze. His face drained of color. "You armed it," he said softly. She did not answer. The commander moved toward the panel. 2 aliens blocked him. Not to protect him. To protect the switches. Loyalty cracked in half. Outside, the lights in the sky shifted. The eyes began to move closer, sinking through clouds, through atmosphere. The beacons were not watching anymore. They were arriving. The entity's shape rose higher. The core chamber walls stretched to make space, metal growing like bone. The shelter was changing to fit it. "This cage is small," the entity said. "But kind." The human engineer finally spoke. "It's not a cage," she whispered. "It's a trigger." Everyone turned. She stood, shaking, hand hovering over the red switches. "This shelter was never meant to hold it forever," she said. "It was meant to decide." The older man stared at her in horror. "You promised me you destroyed that option." "I promised," she said. "I lied." The calm voice came back online, broken but obeying her. Final authority confirmed. The commander lunged forward. Too late. One switch flipped. Deep below, something answered. Not the entity. Something else. Older. Hungrier. A signal shot out from the core, tearing through the sky. Every eye outside turned toward the planet at once. The entity froze mid-rise. "That was not meant for you," it said, sounding almost afraid. The shelter shook violently as something massive began to wake beneath even the core. And far above, a new shadow broke through the clouds, falling fast toward them. The shadow hit the ground and the planet screamed. Gravity spiked, crushing everyone to the floor. The core walls split as if pulled by an unseen hand. The entity below recoiled, folding inward. Something else was arriving. The human engineer slammed her palm onto the second red switch. Not panic. Decision. The shelter answered her instantly, rerouting power away from containment and into the deep layers below. "You don't control this," the commander shouted, dragging himself forward. "I never did," she said. "That's the point." A new structure rose through the core floor. Not grown. Built. Ancient human design wrapped around something much older. A spear of black stone and light, chained by fields that screamed under strain. The older man stared in disbelief. "The anchor," he whispered. "They told me it was destroyed." "They told you what you needed to hear," the engineer said. "Just like I told you." Outside, the sky split open. The falling shadow slowed, then stopped. It was not a ship. It was a fragment of something vast, held in place by the anchor's pull. The entity spoke again. Its voice cracked now. "You woke the Eater." The shelter groaned as power drained from every system. Lights dimmed. Air thinned. The calm voice struggled to keep up. Structural integrity falling. Probability of survival declining. Aliens and humans alike stared at the anchor. Old markings burned along its length. Maps. Not of space. Of layers beneath reality. "This isn't about this planet," the commander said slowly. "Is it?" The engineer met his eyes. "Never was." The older man backed away, shaking. "You said we were the caretakers." "We are," she replied. "Caretakers of the door." The entity twisted, its shape unraveling. "We were sealed to protect you," it said. "From what waits below." A deep pulse surged from under the core. The shelter sank further, dragged by the anchor toward a depth with no measurements. The eater responded with hunger, pulling back. On hidden screens, new data appeared. Dozens of worlds marked in red. All with human shelters. All with the same design. All broken. The commander whispered, "How many times have we failed?" The engineer closed her eyes. Enough. She moved toward the final red switch. Her hand hovered. Blood ran from her nose. "If I flip this," she said, "we don't win. We choose who loses." The entity screamed in rage. The eater roared in answer. The anchor cracked down the center, light pouring out like fire. The calm voice made one last clear statement. Final choice required. The engineer pressed the switch, and the shelter began to open downward, straight into the dark beneath everything. The shelter opened downward, and light poured up from nowhere. The air changed, thick and cold, tasting like metal and rain. The entity screamed once, then went silent. Everyone felt a memory that was not theirs. A truth pressed into their minds without words. The space below was not empty. It was layered, like pages stacked under reality. Shapes drifted there, slow and watching. Not alive in any known way. Not dead either. They turned as the shelter opened, aware. The older man dropped to his knees. His hands shook. He had seen this place before. Not in person. In fragments. In dreams that followed him across systems. The anchor shattered completely, falling apart into light. Chains snapped one by one. The pull reversed. The eater recoiled, wounded, but not destroyed. The human engineer staggered forward. Her eyes reflected the layered dark below. She was not looking at it. She was listening. A new signal spread through the chamber. Not loud. Not violent. Clear. Bold. It did not come from the entity. Came from beneath everything. On the walls, images appeared. Humans building shelters. Again and again. On different worlds. Same shape. Same core. Always too late. Always one person at the switch. Always her. The commander gasped. That's impossible. She touched her face, confused, then afraid. I don't remember, she whispered. The calm voice returned, stripped of tone. Identity confirmation expanding. Her memories began to align. Not lives. Roles. The same decision carried forward, rebuilt each time in a new body. She had not lied. She had forgotten. The older man looked up at her, broken. You were never just an engineer. No, she said. Tears floated from her eyes, pulled downward. I was the lock. The entity stirred, weakened but alive. And we were the warning, it said softly. One of the drifting shapes below rose closer. As it moved, gravity bent around it. The shelter groaned, metal stretching beyond limits. The commander backed away. If that comes through. It already has, the engineer said. A panel opened beside her. Inside was no switch, only a mark. Her mark. It matched the symbol burning in her palm now. She pressed her hand to it. The shelter stopped shaking. The layered dark responded, folding inward, focusing on her. For the first time, something beneath reality hesitated. You can seal this again, the older man said. Hope cracked his voice. You can end it. She shook her head slowly. Seal means delay. Delay means repetition. The entity spoke, weak but honest. If you open fully, everything above burns. If I don't, she replied, everything below eats. The shapes beneath began to rise together, no longer watching, choosing. The shelter system screamed as power spiked beyond red. Space itself thinned. The engineer stepped forward, toward the open dark, and gravity let go. Gravity vanished, and everyone lifted from the floor. The core chamber stretched wider than its walls. Something stepped out of the dark below, not rising, not falling, walking on nothing. Time slowed around it. The shape was tall and thin, made of shifting layers like glass and shadow. Its edges did not stay still. Each step bent space inward, pulling light with it. The drifting shapes behind it stopped, as if waiting for permission. The entity recoiled in fear. Real fear. That is not meant to wake, it whispered. The figure turned its head. No face. No eyes. But everyone felt watched. Judged. Counted. The calm voice failed completely. Screens shattered. The shelter systems went blind. The human engineer floated forward, pulled by something stronger than gravity. Her mark burned white-hot now. The figure paused when it saw her hand. Recognition passed between them. The older man shouted her name, but sound barely traveled. His voice stretched and broke. The commander fired his weapon. The blast froze mid-air, then fell apart into sparks. The figure raised one long arm. Outside, the sky tore open. Not clouds. Not atmosphere. A clean split, like a wound. Through it, structures appeared. Massive. Silent. Watching the planet like a test object. Not ships. Frames. On hidden displays that flickered back to life, the commander saw them. Hundreds. Thousands. Positioned across space. All facing inward. This isn't an invasion, he whispered. It's an inspection. The figure spoke, its voice not sound but pressure. Cycle deviation detected. The engineer felt memories unlock faster now. Not hers alone. Every version. Every world. Every failure logged and measured. We were never meant to win, she said. We were meant to report. The entity screamed in rage. You promised us release. You were the signal, the figure replied. Not the solution. The drifting shapes below surged upward, desperate. As they touched the core's edge, they burned away, erased without fire. The shelter began to collapse inward, crushed by forces pulling in opposite directions. The planet itself groaned, crust splitting as if peeled from inside. The older man grabbed onto a railing, eyes wide with terror. They're not stopping it, he shouted. They're letting it happen. The figure turned again, this time toward the stars beyond the tear. A command pulsed outward. More frames lit up. Across space, other shelters responded. The engineer saw them activate, one by one, on distant worlds. Doors opening downward. Anchors breaking. The same choice unfolding everywhere at once. Her voice shook. They're scaling the test. The figure moved closer to her, towering now. Final evaluation begins. The planet's core cracked, and the sky started to fall inward, as if space itself was collapsing toward a single point. The sky folded inward, and the planet screamed like a living thing. Oceans rose in walls, frozen in mid-air. Mountains bent, pulled toward the same invisible center. The core chamber cracked open to the stars. And everyone finally understood this was not an accident. The frames in space were not watching the planet. They were measuring the response. The figure stood still as the world broke around it. Certain. The engineer felt its attention shift from systems to people. From structures to choice. This is a filter, she whispered. Not a test of strength. The commander floated beside her, eyes wide, tears drifting from his face. Then what are we being judged on? The figure did not answer. But the drifting memories did. Images flashed through the core. Humans and aliens standing together. Turning on each other. Choosing sacrifice. Choosing escape. Choosing nothing at all. Each outcome logged. Each world ranked. The older man watched in horror. They don't care who survives, he said. Only how we decide. Below, the layered dark surged again. The Eater, wounded but alive, wrapped itself around the collapsing core of the planet, trying to hold reality together. Not to destroy. To save itself. The entity's voice returned, weak but desperate. We were never your enemy, it said. We were the pressure that made you choose. The engineer felt her mark pulse. Pain and clarity at once. She saw the truth hiding between moments. The shelters were not cages. They were mirrors. Every cycle ended the same way. Collapse. Evaluation. Reset. The same engineer rebuilt. The same role reborn. Memory trimmed. Choice repeated. She laughed once, sharp and broken. We've been proving the same thing over and over. The figure finally reacted. A pause. A recalculation. Outside, one of the frames flickered. Just for a second. Hope struck like lightning. The commander saw it too. It can change, he said. That means this isn't finished. The older man pushed himself toward the engineer. Then break the pattern, he pleaded. Do something different. The shelter shuddered violently. Power surged into the core from every remaining system. The eater roared, wrapping tighter, slowing the collapse but tearing itself apart. The figure raised its arm again. The engineer stepped forward. No, she said. Her voice cut through the pressure. You don't get to finish this alone. The mark on her hand spread up her arm, branching like light through veins. Symbols across the shelter changed shape, responding to her will, not the system's. Across space, more frames flickered. The figure tilted its head. Anomaly confirmed, it said. The engineer turned to the others. Fear and resolve mixed in her eyes. If we do this, she said, there's no record, no repeat, no reset. The commander nodded once. The older man closed his eyes. The engineer placed her hand on the core itself. And the shelter stopped obeying the universe. The shelter screamed as time began to fracture. Systems counted down numbers that meant nothing. The core burned white, eating light and sound. Outside, the planet tore itself apart. Inside, everyone felt the choice closing. The engineer pressed her hand deeper into the core. The mark spread across her chest now, glowing through skin and bone. The shelter stopped resisting and started listening. Across space, frames went dark, one by one, not failing, turning away. The figure reacted instantly. Space tightened around it, trying to lock the moment in place. The engineer screamed as gravity returned in waves, crushing and releasing, over and over. The commander grabbed her arm, anchoring her. His bones cracked. He did not let go. Do it, he gasped. Before they freeze this. The older man moved to a final console, one the engineer had never shown anyone. His hands shook as he entered a sequence burned into his memory long ago. He had hidden it for this moment. A deep alarm sounded. Not from the shelter. From the frames. Override detected, the figure said. Its voice was no longer calm. Unauthorized agency. The eater made its choice. With a roar that shook dimensions, it turned inward and wrapped itself fully around the core. Not attacking. Sacrificing. Its body burned away, feeding the engineer power it had never given before. The entity watched, stunned. You would end yourselves for them? For the chance, the eater replied, fading. The core flared. Reality bent. The engineer saw beyond the frames, beyond the watchers. She saw something waiting behind them. Something that feared unpredictability more than destruction. She understood. This isn't about survival, she said through tears. It's about control. The figure moved forward, reaching for her. Space folded like cloth in its grip. The commander released her and shoved her toward the core. Make it matter, he said. The figure struck him. He vanished without sound. The older man shouted in rage and pain, slamming his hand down on the console. The shelter responded with a pulse that raced across space faster than light. Every shelter on every world answered. Not with doors. With voices. Millions of choices. Unplanned. Unrecorded. Overlapping in chaos. The frames shook. Cracks spread across them like spider webs. The figure screamed for the first time. The engineer felt herself unravel, stretched across every moment she had ever lived. Past versions of her screamed and went silent as the pattern finally broke. The core began to collapse inward, no longer a door but a wound. The older man looked at her one last time, pride and sorrow in his eyes. You did it, he whispered. The engineer fell into the light, and the universe held its breath. Light became silence, and silence became understanding. The engineer did not fall. She unfolded. She saw the watchers without frames. She saw the universe before fear shaped it. And she finally saw who started the cycle. It was not the figures. Not the frames. Not the eater. It was humanity. Long before shelters, before stars were mapped, humans had touched something beneath reality. Not by war. By curiosity. They saw a universe that could break if choice became too wild. So they built guardians to measure it, to guide it. The frames were not judges. They were tools. The figures were not masters. They were limits. The eater and the entity were not enemies. They were reactions. The engineer understood her true role at last. She was not a lock. Not a mirror. She was a correction. Every cycle had failed because it tried to preserve control. This time was different. The watchers recoiled as she changed the outcome. She did not destroy them. She released them. Control dissolved into uncertainty. Across space, the frames shattered into harmless light. The pressure lifted. Planets stopped tearing. Time loosened its grip. The shelter faded, its purpose complete. On the broken world below, survivors fell to the ground as gravity returned gently. The storm vanished. The sky healed. The older man stood alone now, the console silent. He felt the weight lift from his chest. He laughed once, then cried. The entity faded, no longer needed. The eater was gone, but its sacrifice echoed like a promise. The engineer did not return. Not in body. Her presence spread instead. Not a ruler. Not a god. A possibility woven into reality itself. The universe changed in a quiet way. No resets. No cycles. No hidden tests. Choice became real. Somewhere far away, a new shelter powered down without ever opening. Another never built at all. The watchers withdrew into myth. The story became legend. But deep beneath reality, something else stirred. Not measured. Not guided. Not known. It had been waiting for freedom. And now, it noticed the silence where the cycle once lived.